Hello everybody, HALCYON here. I know it's been a very long time since I've been on the channel. Thanks for coming by. I know something I've always wanted to do and something you guys have always wanted was behind the scenes content of the shoots that I'm on. Personally, for me, when I'm on set filming, it's very hard for me to stop what I'm doing, totally switch my train of thought and go into like behind the scenes mode. So I was kind of thinking of ways that I could achieve doing behind the scenes for you guys, and I had the thought of why don't I just strap a GoPro to my head, record the shoot, and then we'll talk about it later. So that's exactly what we're going to do here today, and we are going to kick off this new series of content with the Spirit Ray feature of Tess's 180SX. Beautiful, beautiful machine. I have quite the affinity for S13s right now, as you guys can tell by what's been on the channel lately. So what we're going to do in this series is we're going to take a look at the edit, we're going to take a look at how it was filmed, kind of my thought process and my thesis behind what I did in the order I did it and why I did it that way. Take a look at the color, take a look at the sound, and in this case we're going to take a look at the song as well, since I produced the song for this one. To start off, we ended up at this location here, which I had scouted early in the day with my friend Brent over at B-Gas Films. This location was perfect. It had this little concrete patch and this just open area of grass all behind it, and then the water way in the back. Made like a perfect intro spot for us to kind of set up a scene there. Something I know a lot of people don't like doing, and I don't like doing it myself, is shooting a black car at night. But something about Tess's S13 just told me I had to do it at night, because the car to me just looks so menacing, so mysterious, so ominous. First scene here on the concrete pad, you see all these slow moving, not totally revealing shots, and that's kind of how I wanted to start this one off, was to not show you the entirety of the vehicle yet. I think the shot that shows the most out of anything would be this one here. And I did have this one down here, but I felt like the two in combo would be a little too revealing, and that's not what I wanted to do just yet, because for the intro of this song I had this synth that plays completely by itself.
You are now watching HALCYON.
So for that, I wanted the footage to play along with that minor note, very ominous synthesizer that the melody of will continue out throughout the entire song. Now I have to apologize for this one. This will be a learning process as we go. I did not record the behind the scenes of this first little segment here. We had gotten there at 8 p.m. Sunset was around 8:30. We were on a bit of a time crunch, and I really just wanted to get started right off the bat. What we did for this is we had the Kinefinity Terra on a Manfrotto tripod with a Rhino slider. And all these movements here are just very gentle slider movements with the Canon 24-105, playing around with various focal lengths. And then if we take a look at the color grade, you can see these are actually kind of bright. This is the original log here, and this is the full grade. Let's turn off the full grade here so you guys can see the difference of what I did with the actual grade. So here is kind of a Rec 709 conversion. Turn that off and then turn the conversion plus our grade on. So we still had a little bit of sunlight. You can see back here in the water and off the reflection. Quite a bit of a blue curve to everything to really play into the night feel. Go down to our color wheels here. You'll see I'm just pretty much cranking up the midtones with like a cyan blue. Here we're punching down the exposure, putting our white balance a little more blue. This shot, since it was static, is actually two layers of the same shot. The only difference being this one up top has this car traveling in the background, whereas this one, it's a little bit emptier, and I just really love the reflection going off the water. What I did there, if I turn this bottom one off, is duplicate it, just add an opacity mask for this area, and then it just overlays perfectly and gives us a little bit of extra reflection right there. This is where I did pull out the GoPro, so let's jump into the behind the scenes there. I'm going to toss these guys on. Lately when I've been editing, I've been feeling like some headaches through the middle of the day, so I grabbed this pair of blue light glasses, and I've actually found that it does diminish my headaches when I'm staring at a computer screen for a long time. So if you've been getting headaches while you're editing, look into getting a pair of these. Very helpful. So right here, I'm just kind of directing Tess as to what I want her to do. framing up my shot, kind of showing her my shot so she has an idea of where to go. And I'm just telling her what I want, which is basically start over on the right tree, walk over to the left tree, and then come up the grass there. Right here, we're just framing up, zooming in, making sure it's sharp. And there we just call action on Tess and let her do her thing. From there, we followed it up with a handheld shot following behind her. The intensity of the song starts to pick up here, so I wanted the camera movement to pick up with the song and add a little bit of excitement, a little bit of tension, so to speak. Because right about here, the subwoofer starts to come in. If you're watching this on the phone, you will not hear the sub. Here is just me following her with the Terra in my hand. From there, it's kind of a front 3/4 totally wide shot, revealing her walking around the vehicle. And whenever I do takes where I have someone walking up to a car and getting in the car from multiple angles, I'll have them do the entire sequence every time. That way, it gives me room in post to play around with what shots I want to use when. And then you can see here, doing the same shot, I'm just telling her to back up, so I have the buffer as well. So we have her just getting in the car. Then we jump over to the shot. I particularly love that it was just past golden hour into the blue hour of the night, where it's dark out, but you can still make out a lot of detail in the sky. Right here, I tried to time the end of that little melody with her closing the door, so we'll play that back. Then car starts up, lights come on, and then this is a very important shot here. If you've been watching my videos for any amount of time, you know I like to throw some suction cup shots in there. And what I've been experimenting with lately is getting these 40-inch and 20-inch grip rods that are more so designed for grip applications like lighting, flags, and using those as my rods for the suction cup, and you'll see how we assemble it here. But what it allows you to do is to put the camera much further out from the vehicle. The reason I wanted to do that for that specific shot is because every shot up to this point has been far away from the vehicle, and when this shot comes on, I wanted you to believe that the camera was still on a tripod or is me holding the gimbal, and then when the car starts moving, the camera moves with the car to a T. I will leave links in the description to all these pieces of equipment to build one of these out for yourself. I will say what's very important when building these out is not to do it alone. I tried doing this rigging up on my own car, and I ended up hitting the paint multiple times just because they're pretty heavy, and because they're 40 inches long, it's very hard to realize that if you loosen something, the rod's going to drop down and hit your car. What made it especially difficult with Tess's car here is that the quarter panel here was entirely fiberglass, and I didn't want to risk putting the suction cups onto fiberglass, so that meant I had to work with the rear window, the roof, or the door to build out my 3-point setup. It ended up not working out, and I only went with 2 mounting points, and that's why when the car takes off a bit, you actually see the whole rig shake a little bit. So since it wasn't going to work out, I ended up setting that rod up with 2 suction cups just because the weight is so far out that it puts a lot of upward force on the suction cup itself. An important part of building this out is to get these 5/8 inch baby pins, and you will need a camera cage for this setup. So if you don't have a cage on your camera, definitely invest in one. Right here is where you can see where the rod actually inserts into the grip head up here. So you slide that in. Then I have Tess's husband here, Rick. He has a very nice Miata Millennium Jade. Check him out here. He's helping us out on the shoot this night. I don't think I recorded me putting in the bottom one, but essentially there's a 5/8 inch rod at the bottom of the camera, inserted into a grip head, and then you can see the suction cup on the door here. Here I'm just telling her, pull out slowly, nothing crazy, and then I actually sent her all the way down the street in case I wanted to use some of that. Ended up not using it. But if we jump over to the edit here, I'll pull the clip out. So again, because it was only mounted with 2 points, it does get that bounce as her car is bouncing up and down. If it was mounted with 3 solid points, there would be no shake at all. And I actually did kind of poor on my exposure for that one. I overexposed it a bit too much. Let's look at the grade here. So you can see it's very bright, and to match the rest of the shoot, I had to pull down the grade pretty significantly. Here's the original shot, and then the grade. Had to bring it down almost a full stop. Add a good amount of contrast, a little bit of a color curve, and color wheels here. From there we move into the shot of her going down the street. I love this shot. I particularly love the way that the lights are moving along the trees. This one was done with the Terra. Jump over to the BTS here. You can see me just throwing the entire rod setup in the car because we were losing light by the second. Here I am on the street. I still have the camera set up on the tripod with the slider. What's nice about just leaving it on the slider is that if I want it to be a static shot, I just leave it alone, but if I want to add a little bit of movement, I can. So framing up, making sure it's nice and sharp, perfectly centered. Something that always bothers me about shots like this where you're looking down a street is that the camera's a little bit off axis. You can really tell in the way the skew of the image looks, so I really try and make sure that's always perfectly straight. Sent her all the way down the street, didn't need her to turn off onto the other street or anything because I knew it was going to stop there. From there we jump into our first feature location, and before we go into this, I kind of want to explain something that I feel is very important when planning these types of shoots, and that is the logistics behind it. What I mean by that is the amount of setups and breakdowns I'm going to do, I try to minimize, especially on a shoot like this where we only have one shot. I can't really meet up with this car conveniently at any point soon again. So I'm trying to minimize how many times I'm switching from gimbal to tripod to slider to handheld, or if I need to put things back in the car and then take them back out and they need to be reassembled or anything like that. It did help that I had 3 different cameras. But even then, I still try to keep everything as assembled as I possibly can. That way, when I need it again, I can just pull it right out. Another part of the logistics equation is considering the type of environment I'm in. For example, in this scenario, we're in Daytona Beach, Florida. Daytona Beach is pretty much like a party tourist city. A lot of bars, a lot of drinking. So I didn't want us to be doing the rollers at like 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night because I figured the roads would still be pretty busy. Chances of people being drunk are higher, so I thought it made more sense that let's go to all of our feature locations first, do our feature shots at every location that we're going to do them at, and then really late into the night we could do all the rolling content. Playing into the black car at night theme, that meant the way for us to make this work the best was to find the brightest light sources we can. That way we can use reflections and really strong points of light to work to our advantage. So we're driving around, came across this theater, had this light board set up for theater posters, I guess you could say. But there were no posters there, so it was just this window of super bright light, and the second I saw it, I knew we had to stop there and use that. You can see over on the right-hand side of the vehicle that even though there's no light source on that side of the vehicle, the ground is so brightly lit from this light source that it's making up for the reflection in the door here, and it's such a nice, smooth gradient. Jump into this first section of feature shots, and I kind of dance around the car for a little bit. I get my variety of content. I usually like to start off with some type of reveal shot or approaching shot. This shot was actually longer, much longer than this. I dragged it out for a bit too long. Started it here where the motion kind of picked up a decent amount. Here I just play around with different focal lengths. I play around with different camera movements, different speeds that I'm walking around the car, so we can jump into it here. Let's go. So you can see in this shot here, we're playing around with that reflection off the hood. You may notice that we go from a totally dry setting into a very wet setting, and what happened during the middle of this shoot is it started raining, which killed about an hour of our time. It started coming down pretty heavy, so we had to take some refuge in a parking garage for about an hour, wait for it to die off. Came back to the same location, and that variable being thrown at me really made for some difficulty when trying to play with the continuity here. So I thought the best way for this scenario was to use that open hi-hat that kind of goes to kind of mesh 2 shots together that have the same movement. Give it a little speed ramp. And then throw in, I found this stock video of thunderclouds in 4K, thankfully. Threw that in there on the break of the song. I tried to include this little break to the beat right here, where we have that riser into the snare, little break from the bass, double kick to exit. We have a little thunder audio clip right there too. Drone shot here, I had to clean this one up with some denoiser because it was pretty bad. And right here, this shot has a intention for being right here. If you listen to the song and listen to the respace in the song, it slides up. I intentionally put that shot there because we're panning up from the ground. I thought it went really well with the sound of the respace. And right here we have a bit of an opacity mask wipe. So if I turn off this bottom layer, which is this shot of her getting in, you can see it's totally black. And the way that works is we're just putting a mask over. On this clip here, anything after that fence post is taken out. That way it makes for the fence post, transitioning us to the next shot. I particularly love this shot here and the way that the light bounces off the door and the fender and the quarter panel. I think it shows off the kit really well between the side skirt, the bottom of the door, the quarter panel. If we jump into the BTS over at this scene here, nothing really too crazy. We're using the original DJI Ronin with a Cinemilled ring, Adamus Ninja V for our recording and monitoring, and the A7S is on the gimbal. I didn't switch to putting the Terra on there because it's a pretty time-consuming process, and I kind of had made the decision for the night to marry the Terra to the tripod. At this point in the shoot, you could really start to see the rain coming down. That's when we were like, okay, we need to get out of here before the car gets like totally drenched and our night is ruined. Then we go into our second drop of the song, where we transition from this drone shot to this roller here, and I just have a little flare overlay right here. This is an anamorphic flare I recorded, and these will actually be for sale pretty soon. It's a pack of 27 different anamorphic flares. You can use them to mimic anamorphic flares, or you can use them just as overlays like I am right here. This is a bridge in Daytona Beach. You could say is pretty iconic. It's very nicely lit, but it's only lit from the center, which means you have to kind of put the car in the center and shoot from the outside, because if the car you're shooting from is on the inside and the subject vehicle is on the outside, the downlighting of the streetlights usually creates a shadow into the other lane. Let's run through this roller sequence here and we'll break down the behind the scenes. Now the first roller here was super important because I wanted her to hang really far back, and I told her to keep the car in a lower gear. That way when I call you up, you are already in your power band and the car can kind of shoot up to the camera and add that additional sense of movement. So the way it worked out for this one is I had Tess wait at this light back here. We're pulled over on the side of the bridge, had a pretty big shoulder for us to wait on safely. Her light goes green. I'm telling Rick, go, 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 because I want the shot to happen where we're both moving at a decent speed. This is me kind of going back for like, go, 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 and then checking to see where she's at. This is where I call her up. See, I'm kind of poising myself, and here she is. So I knew we got that shot locked down. Kind of just continue our way, making our way over the bridge. Bouncing around between front 3/4, rear 3/4. And then here we are on the return, setting up for a rear 3/4 shot. I love, love, love the way the light passes over the car, highlighting the silhouette of the car. pull into a parking lot here and set up a suction cup setup. This is a more traditional suction cup setup versus the longer rod version I was using before. And I put the camera over on her window here. To make the most of our time, I kept the mounting location the same, but I did a 180 with the camera, so we have a shot looking into her interior and a shot looking at her spoiler, framing up the shot, making sure it's sharp and in focus. This is with the A7R2, and we have an SLR Magic 18mm on there. So if we jump back to the roller sequence, spoiler shot, interior shot. And those shots are really long because Rick and I waited in that parking lot there, and I just had her make passes over the bridge. So if you have a car and you want to do a feature shoot with me, be prepared to drive a lot and do the same route over and over and over. That's something I always try and stress with people before I shoot with them, or if they want to shoot. I always try and make sure, like, hey, are you okay with driving the same road like 5-6 times? Because I've been in situations where, like, I can tell people are starting to get a little annoyed. And I guess I don't blame them, because the average person might not realize how much goes into making this happen. But just a little piece of advice, always make sure that people are really down for the cause and really want to be doing this. Tess and her husband are perfect examples of people that were down for the cause. They had like a 4-hour drive the next day, and they stayed out till 4 a.m. doing this shoot with me. Alright, so we get through the second drop here. And we move into this feature shoot location here. This was our second location of the night. Found this kind of cute, like, hometown USA main street with this really nice sidewalk. And really great lighting, as you can see here, in addition to Rick holding one of my LED panels just for a little bit of fill light on the intercooler. I thought what would be cool is to do a shot looking down the sidewalk and have her just approach the camera, shut the lights off, and then we can jump into the detail shots, which is what we're doing here. So I'm telling her here, like, back, 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 because I want as much room for a buffer as possible. I saw a cop back here, so you can see me trying to be, like, subtle about it. I'm like, come on, come on, come on, wait, come back, come back. It wasn't obvious enough. This is me and her husband, like, laughing about it while she's like doing the action that I gave her. I wasn't even rolling. Cop kind of stops, looks at us. He doesn't say anything. We're just like, hey, we're just taking some pictures. He was cool with it. So we do the take again. Tell her back, 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 back. Now forward, 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 and stop. Lights off. And one thing I would like to point out with the lights turning off is I did a little EQ sweep on the song. We'll go into that more when we go over talking about the song. Then all the shots in this sequence here are with the Terra and a Sigma 18-35 1.8, because I wanted the shots to be shallow, really bright, and kind of like dreamy in a sense. Bouncing around the car, finding shots I like, using the LED panel just as a little source of fill light, especially on a black car like this. When I'm doing these slider shots, I typically do them 5-6 times until I really feel like I got it. I didn't use this shot here, I think because there was like a fingerprint on the car. I don't know. Let's take a look. Where is it? It's not this shot. I do like this shot. I don't know why I didn't use this one. I think I've... I don't know. Oh, where is that one? Was I rolling? I was rolling because the LED here is red. I have no idea what that shot is. That's probably why I didn't use it. Anyway, always have time for a quick iPhone pic. And then playing around with the slider a little bit more. Sometimes, depending on the setup and the shot, if I grip the monitor, I feel like I have really good control if I'm using the monitor and the handle of the tripod head to control my shot. So at the same location, after we got those feature shots, I set up the A7R2 with a Rokinon 135 onto the tripod setup with the slider. I opted for the A7R2 because I had this 135 f2 and I wanted a telephoto shot and I needed a lot of light, and it's the longest lens I have with the lowest aperture. And that's where we do this intro shot into the parking lot here. While I still had it set up on the tripod, I opted to get our exit shot as well, and this one's going to hurt a little bit. Sorry for showing this to everybody, Tess. One more time. Let's watch it in full screen, shall we? She's a really good sport about it, which I love, because there's nothing worse than when you're shooting with someone and like these things happen, right? You know, if you're gonna street drive your car, like these things are gonna happen. There's nothing worse than like someone who stops and like makes a whole ordeal out of like, oh my god, my lip, bro, like, oh. Great attitude here. Just smile, laugh about it. So here we are getting the actual shot with a bit of an angle so she doesn't scrape. Because she had to take it at such an extreme angle so slowly, the shot took really long and I ended up not using the whole thing. Then after we got the exit shot, it was time to get some supporting shots for our pulling in. So we set up the suction cup with the SLR Magic 18mm on the front. It is a solid manual lens to have in your arsenal to get a nice wide shot with a low aperture. And you'll have to forgive me, this is my first experience doing this behind the scenes, and I've never actually owned a GoPro before. I've only like rented them or used other people's GoPros, and especially with the 10 that I got, I did not realize how fast the batteries die. And at this point in the night, I'm recharging the GoPro as much as I can with my car's USB port, and it wasn't enough, so I had to forfeit getting behind the scenes of this shot here, which was another one of those extended rod shots, but I do have a picture of the setup that I'll put here. After we get that supporting shot, we had to take the bridge back over to the mainland of Daytona Beach. So we did a run up and down the strip of Daytona Beach, which is a 2-lane road. Kind of sucked because I couldn't really get a wide parallel shot. This is where we got all the fill-in, all the details, all the different rollers you see throughout the video. This particular portion of the shot I love because of the colors of this building back here and like all the shapes and lights. So we play around with that for a little bit, and then we move to our third feature location. Want to say at this point in the night it's like 2 a.m.-ish. GoPro is totally dead. Charging it while we shoot at this third location, which is here. This is also kind of the climax of the song, where we have the original melody still playing and we bring in that new synth. For the rest of the song, I kind of compilation it between a little bit of the first location, a little bit of this part, a little bit of this part, a roller here. Absolutely in love with these amusement park shots and the movement of like these arms behind the car. It has such a neo, like cyber vibe to me. This shot, I wanted to like it so much more, and I thought I liked it when I was getting it, but you can see here like all the lines of the buildings and the streetlights. They're pretty much straight, but the car has a little bit of a slant to it, and it's because the pavement dies down right here. This shot is possibly my favorite of the whole video. I don't know why. It's just the way this arm of the amusement park ride is slowly moving in the background. This here was a random parking garage we came across, and it was really well lit and totally empty at this point in the night. So we hopped in here, grabbed a few shots using the skateboard. I think this is actually like a bus station. Pop it on the skateboard, and just nice smooth approaches, one for the rear, one for the front. I also noticed that the lighting in the parking garage on her interior was really nice, so grabbed this quick interior shot here. Rick has a crazy cart that he modified and also painted Millennium Jade. We got kicked out at this point. Security guard, you can see him walking up. For the very last shots of the night, the only thing I didn't have at this point in the night were some type of pass-by shots where the camera's poised off to the side on a tripod and the car's just passing by and we're following along with it. I want to say at this point it's 3 a.m. So with those pass-by shots, we were essentially wrapped up and it was time for them to head back to their hotel. So while we're on the way back to the hotel, we passed this "Can't Not Shoot Welcome to Daytona Beach" sign by the Daytona International Speedway. We do 2 takes here so I can get 1 rear shot and 1 front shot. Love the way the light reflects off her quarter panel and back window here. And right there too. Bit of a random part of the suction cup clip I pulled here. Shot from the first scene I did not use. Something from the amusement park. And here we wrap up the video with a 180 coming towards the camera and leaving the camera shots. Then we got the new logo outro. What do you guys think of that? Personally, I love it. Funny enough, I actually did the sound design for the logo animation with this edit here. Now let's dive into the sound. I know you guys are probably going to ask, how did I go about recording the sound for this one? This exhaust audio is from the One Night in Vegas video, ironically, of another black S13. Both cars are SR20s, and I think she had an HKS exhaust, but it wasn't very loud. It was just kind of hummy, and I knew that in the edit I wasn't really going to sound or do anything for it. So I just pulled this existing audio to make my life a little bit easier, especially on the time crunch that we were on. And with this one, you can notice I'm not really dropping the volume of the song too much or at all when the exhaust audio comes in, and that's mainly because this isn't that type of edit where it's really intense. It's all about like racing and exhaust audio and turbo noises. Like, this is a very clean car. It's a very well-rounded car. This edit wasn't designed to be something super intense. I wanted the music to be the star of the audio and not so much the exhaust. I'm going to quickly shout out Zach, who owned that black S13, because this is his audio of his own car. Try to make the exhaust sound as realistic to the shots as possible. We have this first shot here where she's pulling up on the camera, so we have a nice decent pull here. And then let off right as she lets off. Going up the bridge. And at this point we passed the apex of the bridge and we're going downhill. So I have a bit of decel audio right here. And just some generic audio for this portion. Have another one of our anamorphic flares that will be available soon here. We did an opacity mask on this one, as well as scaled height down. So this is what the original flare looks like. And I was moving it around with the shot. And by no means am I trying to trick anyone into thinking I shot this anamorphic. I'm just trying to add a little bit of flavor to the edit. As far as the color for this one goes, I wanted a very deep blue, deep cyan type of look to go with the cyber type of sounds that I was going for with the song. Typically what I'll do when I'm starting the coloring process is I will find the quote-unquote hero shot, which for me in this one is that first pull-up roller shot, and I will grade that one. And for any scenario that looks similar, I will copy and paste the grade over and then adjust accordingly. Looking at the grade over here on the right, it's actually not anything too special. We have our basic exposure adjustments, No LUT, a little bit of sharpness, tiny little S curve, a bump in saturation in the cyans over here on the left and the right, tiny bit of a hue shift for our blues to be a little more cyan aqua. From there, I basically copy the color over and I paste it onto every shot and adjust as I need. Typically that changes scene by scene. You can see that I did not apply the hue shift or the saturation bump. If we open up the color wheels here, this is where the majority of the grade happens. You can see I really cranked the light blues into the midtones. If we turn those off here, we get a pretty natural looking shot. Highlights I did not do anything with, and shadows there's a very tiny adjustment. Hardly even noticeable, but just helps add to the overall look. That essentially makes up our edit, our color, our sound on this one. From here we'll jump over to FL Studio and take a look at the song that was produced for this one. Now a very common question is, do you decide on a song before or after you shoot something? And it's really a case-by-case scenario. For this one, I had this song sitting around for almost an entire year before I used it for something. And when I first saw Tessa's car back at Tuner Evo in May, I knew that was the car to use this song for. Even though the version of this song that existed at the time I shot her car was a lot different than this, it still had the bare bones I needed to give me the ideas I wanted. You guys know I'm a very big fan and supporter of the wave scene, and a lot of my music and ideas come from the music within the wave community. One of my favorite artists from the wave community being Dead Crow, so I tried to pull a bit of inspiration from him. First thing I wrote for this song was the melody, and with melodies typically maybe I'll be in the shower or I'm out running errands and I'm just kind of humming things to myself, and with that I came up with this. So that melody repeats for the entirety of the song, and I particularly love songs where the melody is the same throughout the entire track, but everything else around it is changing and the melody kind of falls into the background of the song. So that melody is done with 2 renditions of Serum. One we have a preset from Como Raby Audio, and it's titled Cacaw because it's mimicked after Dead Crow, and we have another one here called Deceased Raven, and this preset is from the homie Yama. Also mimicking Dead Crow. They're a little different in their sound. And I have one panned 25% to the left and one panned 25% to the right. So if you're listening to the song with headphones, you'll have a little bit of a textural difference between the 2 sounds. And it's also the melody that we use for our introduction synth. That sound was made in Massive. This song was produced at 120 BPM, which has been a BPM I've been playing around a lot in lately. I feel like it's the perfect tempo if I want to make something fast or make something slow. Our percussion is made up of a kick, 2 snares that are layered on top of each other, hi-hats, and some background hi-hats to give it a little more variety, a little more texture. Taking a look at the backing hats here, you can see that they don't play too often, but they play a very important part. These ones I play a lot with the velocity, so sometimes they feel like they hit hard, sometimes they feel like they hit a little less. And then if we look at the pan, you can see I'm moving the sound of the backing hi-hats from left to right. Moving on to our percussion for the second drop, it's relatively the same. The only thing different is that I add a little more intensity and speed on the hi-hats. We also include a ride pattern that's hitting on every quarter note. And additionally, there's like an ambient clap sound. So the rhythm that our percussion is providing is relatively staying the same. Just adding a few elements here to pick up the pace of the song. Let's drop that out and we'll move on to our respace and our sub. The respace is making up the range from about 200 Hz to 3000 kHz, and our sub isn't really something you can hear, but on a proper system it's something you can feel, and it really makes up the range from like 40 Hz to 100 Hz. You'll notice right here was that slide I was talking about earlier with the panning up shot. Moving down, we have an ARP that's providing some textural help and adding some different flavor to the song. It doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, it plays with your ears a lot. It pans hard left to hard right. To help us provide fill for the song, we have pads playing in the background throughout the entire song, and they change up a little bit on their intensity as the song progresses. If you feel like you hear the sound dropping out every now and then, that's because there's a sidechain on it, which is basically cutting the sound for a very short amount of time to make room for the kick or the snare, which is also happening on the respace. For that effect, I'm just using gross speed on it, and you'll see right here, drops out and kind of fades back in, and this is happening for all of the snares. Put a little bit of a pitch bend on that one. So it goes from a bit of like an analog brass sound into this cyber dystopian type of synth. When Tess pulls into the spot for the second part of the feature, we have this ARP playing here. Now everything between the melody, the counter melody, the first ARP, and this ARP, they're all played in the same scale, so that's why everything sounds pretty much in home with each other. And right here is where the filter cuts off for when the headlights turn off. That section repeats for 8 bars and makes up the entirety of all those feature shots. And then when we bring it into the amusement park scene, I have 2 versions of the same synth playing on top of each other, just 1 octave apart. So it provides the same sound but more fill. That makes up all the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of the song. And then from there we have a lot of white noise effects, random transition sounds, and little textures sprinkled throughout the song just to give it some movement, something to play with your ears a little bit. With that is the entirety of the SUPERRRR soundtrack. Also forgot to include the little counter melody that's happening right here with the synth we use for the intro. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the song. When I produced it about a year ago and I kind of just made the bare bones for it, it was nothing like this, and I will show it to you right now. I actually ended up calling it Rotary because I felt like it'd be perfect for a 7's day, but here's what it originally sounded like. Super flat, nothing really stands out, it's kind of muddy, and then it turns into this. I still have a lot to learn when it comes to the music production process and mixing and mastering. I'm pretty happy with the way the mix came out for this one. I still have a lot to go when it comes to mastering. That's something that people take years and years to master, and I don't really ever intend on getting that deep with it, but if it can help my songs sound a little bit better, I'm trying to learn as much about it as I can. And on that note, this is the end of our first behind the scenes breakdown. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. Let me know for the future what you'd like me to cover, what you want me to go more in depth on. Do you feel like I didn't cover something enough? Did I cover something too much? Leave any questions down in the comments below and we can start a conversation. Before we depart, I thought I'd bring you guys our old streaming co-star. She's gotten a lot bigger since you last saw her during COVID. Alright, she does not want to get out of the box. I guess at this point, this is where I say like, comment, subscribe. Thank you all very much for watching and tuning in. I will see you in the next behind the scenes breakdown.